So yesterday we began to see the way that Chazal respected is the right word. Okay? Respected and took note of Bruria, right? Rabbi Meir's wife, Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian's daughter. She's mentioned here in the Tosefta, right? Mm-hmm. So Tosefta is a primary source, as we said yesterday. There's a machlokes between her and her brother on a very abstruse, esoteric, arcane, using all these words, halachic discussion. In other words, it was not a simple matter. She was weighing in on a complex halachic situation, and she gave her opinion. And Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, no less, was presented with her opinion on the matter and her brother's opinion, and he said, Yofa Omra Bitoy Mibnoi. Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian's daughter, i.e. Bruria, her word carries halachic weight more even than her brother. Fascinating. Okay. So this is our first insight into her. Let's keep going. The next source is a Gemara in Eruvin Daf Nun Gimel, and this gives us a concept of how this was not a one-off. In case you are tempted to say that this quote in the Tosefta is some sort of one-off quote, although it would be very difficult to say so, because unless you are a serious halachic, a Talmudic scholar, your ability to weigh in on these matters, I mean, nobody would take you seriously. Think about it. Somebody comes in and starts giving an opinion on a deep and complex matter, unless you've already established your bona fides, your credentials, nobody would take you seriously. So if she was just to have walked in off the street, in other words, if she was not, this itself, the Tosefta, would indicate that she had some standing as a scholar in her own right, as a Talmidei Chacham, or whatever word you want to use, right? Imagine somebody walks in off the street, no clue who they are, and especially, I think we have to concede that as a woman, she would probably have to work harder to establish her credentials. And she's talking. This is not in an easy area of Torah. This is in a difficult area of Torah. This is a Tosefta in Kalim, and her word is accepted. So, first of all, context should tell you that. But let's go further. Gemara in Eruvin gives us a clear indication as to her ongoing engagement in Talmudic halachic discourse. Rabbi Yossi Aglili Avaka Ozel Ba'urcha. Rabbi Yossi Aglili was on the way. Ashkechele Bruria, he came across Bruria. Omar Allah, he said to her, he asked her a question, he wanted directions. Yeah. No, there was no Waze, or whatever, no GPS. He said, Be'eza derech nelech lelud. Which way should we go to Lud? Which direction do we go to Lud? Omar Allah. She said to him, Galili Shoita.
That's rude.
It is somewhat rude, yes. I think it's fair to say she had a sharp tongue. Galili Shoita. Loikach Amru Chachamim al Tarba Sicha Ma Isha. Chazal said, there's a Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos, don't speak unnecessary words with a woman who is not your wife. You should have said, which to Lud? Be'ezel alud. You used two superfluous words, and thus she was obviously holding him to a higher standard. This is the Heilige Rabbi Yossi Haglili. He is, he's not, your average Joe on the street. He's Rabbi Yossi Haglili. So she holds him to a high standard. Remember, this is Rabbi Meir's wife. Yeah, she knows what high standards are all about. So she tells him off, and she said, you used two words to me, a strange woman, that you shouldn't have done. And therefore she called him Galili Shaita. Ashkachte lahu Talmida, dava kogoris bilechisha. She came across a Talmud that was learning Torah without articulating quietly, without saying, the Chazal say, Chaim heim lemoitzoehem bepeh. There are many different reasons, by the way, let me mention, both benigla and benista. I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. No, there are many reasons, both benigla and benista, why you should articulate your learning. When you're learning, speak, talk, even if it's to yourself. First of all, it's great, good company, good conversation. But seriously, for a whole bunch of different reasons. First of all, there are psychological and educational, pedagogic reasons why you should articulate, but also in Torah, Chazal say lemoitzi ehem b'peh, and also alpinista, there are ideas in Kabbalah where the tikkunim that you do through ruach, through dibur, are at another level. So, for example, we say, we talk about when you say over the words of Torah of somebody chacham who's no longer alive, we say sivsoisov doiva voice bekever. His lips move in the kever, and this is not just a metaphor. It's Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Chavar in Torah has a very clear explanation of this. Rabbi Tzadok talks about this. There is something to be said for the actual articulation. Anyway, so she came across a Talmud, and she was learning quietly. Bot Shabei. Let's just say she was less than pleased. Omrele, she said to him, Loikach kosuv arucha bakoil ushmura. Im arucha bermache varim shalacha mishtameres. Vim lavena mishtameres. It has to be ordered via all of your limbs, and therefore you should be speaking. What do you she was quite happy to, in English we say she wasn't backwards in coming forwards. Mm-hmm. Okay? Right, she's a fearsome opponent in halachic discussion. Look at this, the next Gemara. Gemara Pesachim Samach Beis, Amud Beis. Rav Simloi Asalakamid Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Simloi came to Rabbi Yochanan, and there was a certain sefer called Sefer Yuchasin. A bit of a debate in the Rishonim exactly what it's referring to. It doesn't matter. There was a certain sefer called Sefer Yuchasin, and this Rabbi Simloi wanted to learn Sefer Yuchasin from Rabbi Yochanan. So Amalei, Nisna Lima Sefer Yuchasin, please teach it to me. Amalei, he said to him, tell me, Mehechonat, where are you from? Amalei Milud, he says, I come from Lud. Vehechon Mesavcha, where do you live? Ben Nahar Da, I live in Nahar Da. Amalei, so he said to him, Ein Nidoinin, Loy Luludim, Veloy Nahar Doin. This sefer is not to be discussed or taught, not to those from Lud and not to those from Nahar Da. V'kol shekain, and you, I'm afraid, have 2 strikes against you, because you come from Lud and you're living in Arda, so no way. A bit of a shaila again in the Rishonim, why this is and what this means is not relevant for us. Kafye v'artse. So he put pressure on. He put pressure on him, and he relented. So in the end, Rabbi Yochanan relented, and he said, okay, I'll teach it to you. So he said, Amalei nisnaya b'shloisha yarche. He said, can you teach it to me in 3 months, please? I'd like to know this in 3 months. Shokal kala posakbe. He took some earth and he threw it at him. He said, Omalei, you really think you're going to be able to understand Sefer Yuchasin and I'm going to be able to teach it to you in such a short time span as 3 months? Uma bruria devisu de Reb Meir. If already Bruria, the wife of Rabbi Meir, Brate de Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian, the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian, de Tanya Tlas Meir Shmeitza Beyoima de Sitva, Mishloish Meir Rabavosa. She was able to learn 300 halachas on a single day from 300 different rabbonim. In other words, she is the smartest cookie you'll ever see in the jar. There's no, she is an incredibly, this is coming from Rabbi Yochanan. I mean, let's just be clear who is speaking over here. Rabbi Yochanan is talking about her academic prowess in glowing terms. I mean, even if he meant this as an exaggeration, and I have no indication to know that he did, but even if he did, he clearly held her in very high esteem in academic matters. She learned this Sefer Yuchasin. It took her 3 years, and even then, I'm not sure we really did it justice in 3 years. So you see a couple of things. That Rabbi Yochanan was familiar with the length of time Bruria took to learn an obscure Sefer. Do you realize that's a familiarity with her learning schedule, with her capability, with her... Absolutely fascinating. And he uses her to tell off this Talmud. You think You have the arrogance, you have the gall to think you're going to be able to absorb this complex topic in 3 months. Bruria, who was a genius, 300 rabbonim, 300 halachas on a single day. And it took her 3 years to learn this. So, she spent 3 years on it, she learnt it. And even then he said, I don't know if she totally, fully got it. So you see clearly she was incredibly, she was no, in England we used to say, when you bang a second-hand car, was it from a Sunday driver? A little old lady who pottered along to church every Sunday. She was no Sunday learner. This is clearly a woman who was absolutely au fait with intricacies and the complexities and the details of halacha and agoda in an incredible way. Okay, and this sets the scene. Actually, I want to give you one more Gemara which isn't here, because this sets the scene for a very difficult piece of Rashi, which you need to know, and we'll spend a little bit of time on it. It's absolutely fascinating. I want to give you one more Gemara. There are others, but I want to give you one more Gemara. And it's important to realize this. It might help us. It's a Gemara which you probably know. Gemara in Brachos Daf Yud. It's not on the sheets here, but the Gemara in Brachos Daf Yud says as follows. There were some Barioni b'shvivusei de Rabbi Meir. There were some hooligans. I don't know whether Rabbi Meir lived in Neukölln or whatever. The clans were bothering him. Whatever. There was a bunch of hooligans who lived near him, and they were disturbing his ability to learn Torah. So he had an idea. He thought he would daven that they should die. That was Rabbi Meir's solution. He should daven that they would die. And Bruria, the Gemara records this, right? His wife said to him, what are you thinking? Daven they should die? Daven that they should do teshuvah. Because the Pasuk says, and she darshened the following. This is Bruria. She darshened the following. It says, Yitamu chatoim min ha'oretz. Not Yitamu chotim min ha'oretz. This is her drosha. This is Bruria's drosha. The sins should be expunged from the earth, should be wiped out. Chatoim is a reference to Averos, not chotim, sinners. Rebbeah, what are you talking about? How could you want to daven that these sinners should die? You should daven that the sins should go away. And so he did, and they did tshuva. This raises another whole separate shaila, beautiful topic for a shir or a number of shirim, and that is the Maharsha over here asks the question, but how can you, an external person, affect somebody else's capacity for Yiras Shamayim? Is it Ali Day Tefillah? And there's a Chazon Ish, and there's a Rav Moshe, and there's a whole beautiful shir on it. Remind me maybe another time. But that's a sideshow to that. But what you see is you get an insight into in two things at least. Number one, this is a woman who is how many of us, when presented with let's put it this way, how many of us, when presented with a real world, a real life problem in our day-to-day, immediately go to a drosha in a posuk in Tehillim to solve it? That's the way I see this Gemara. They're sitting at the supper table and he's discussing with her that they do these band of hooligans that are always molesting him and I don't know what, and they're preventing him from his schedule. And her reaction, and he comes up with something. This is the great Rabbi Meir. This is the great Rabbi Meir. Let's not forget. Her husband, okay, but it's the great Rabbi Meir, and he comes up with a suggestion. No doubt that means that has the full weight of his Talmudic knowledge and everything behind it. And she disagrees with him, immediately references a pshat in a posuk in Tehillim, and she wins the argument. And that's what he goes and does. He accepts her. So this is a very, very serious halachic scholar. As simple as that. Yeah.
Was Rabbi Meir also orienting on that same pasuk or not?
The Gemara doesn't say.
Okay.
Actually, maybe it does, and I've forgotten. Do you want to pass me Gemara Brachos if it's behind you?
Yeah.
I don't know the whole Gemara by heart. I did do this from memory, so it's actually, one should not do that. I actually, as I was talking, I remembered the Gemara. I thought about it yesterday, but I did not. Let's have a quick look. Here we go. Oh no, I thought it was there. I saw that positive. Was it Amud Aleph, Amud Beis? I don't remember. Here we go. Yeah. Hanu bar Yonah daven b'shivusa d'Rameh. Have a commentary too. Have a kaboy Rameh rachmei alayu keichen delay musu. He wanted to daven for them boy rachamim aleim. By the way, just as a quick aside, we always talk about tefillah as asking for rachamim. What does he say? He's asking for rachamim for them that they should die. Asking for rachamim. What does that tell you? No, they say pshat in the Gemara. While I quickly look at Rashi. Pshat is that would be in their best interest. For them to continue living and shepherding the Tana Reb Meir is not in their best interest. So it's better to quit while they're ahead.
So maybe
kind
it
of thing.
Really was a clan. So it was really.
It was something they were bothering him on an ongoing basis. So no, here's the answer. My memory was right. It just says Reb Meir wanted to daven they should die. Omrele Bruria ma da'atoch mishum dechsev yitamu chatoim miksiv chaitim chatoim ksiv. And then she went further, by the way, I forgot this bit. She then continues it by referencing the end of the pasuk. She asks him a question from the end of the pasuk. Daven for them, daven for them that they should daven b'tshuva. And then, so that she said, that's what's in the pasuk. Yitamu chatoim min oretz. David HaMelech is saying, daven, that the sins should be expunged. And mimela urashoyim oideinom, then there's no more rashoyim. Because the chatoim have gone. And that's how you change somebody. You daven for them, you care for them. And this, by the way, also shows, think about it. This shows caring. This shows her belief in her husband's kayachat tefillah. This shows so many wonderful qualities. Think about it. And this is what he did. He took her advice. He did, and hodru b'tshuva, and they did tshuva as a result of her. So fine. So this is who Bruria is. Having got that as a bit of a background, let us now come to a very difficult Gemara and an even more difficult Rashi. Okay? Here, source 10 here. Gemara Avodah Zarah Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, Bruria Dvisu de Rabbi Meir, Brati de Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian Havoy. Bruria was the wife of Rabbi Meir, the daughter of Rabbi Chanina ben Tradian. Omra Lei, she said to her husband, remember, her father and her brother were killed by the Romans. Right, we know. We mentioned it yesterday. Rabbi Chanani ben Tradian, he was burnt with the Sefer Torah. Right, remember? Asar Harugim Malchus. And then her sister, was taken and put in a brothel, a kuba shel zaynos. And so she turned to her husband and she said, "Omralei zila bi milsa de yasva achsoi be kuba shel zaynos." It is so shameful that my sister has been captured by the Romans. She doesn't have a protector anymore. My father is dead. My brother is dead. I'm her relative, and now she's been taken by the Romans and put in a kuba shel zaynos. Please help her. Osu, chakoku lidmusei de Rabbi Meir. Now, so I'm missing out a whole piece. So really, do me a favor, pass me Gemara Avodah Zarah. Sorry. Okay. In the quote here, well, you're really working hard today. I'm sorry, Gabby. No Avodah Zarah. It'll be Avodah Zarah.
Would be great.
There's one.
Where?
In the middle. Just off to the right.
Avodah Zarah, Horius. There, I can see it.
Yeah, just right.
Keep going. Staring at you. There.
Thank
you.
Okay.
Yes. So he's so holy, he doesn't recognize Avodah Zarah even if he falls over. Man, which that sound like.
If you knew roughly this game.
I do. That's right. Hold on. Here we go. So I'm going to, sorry. So let me read out the bits that are missing because they're also absolutely fascinating. Okay? Just a second. And this, by the way, to give it context, this piece of Gemara is directly after the piece in the Gemara over here, which describes and depicts the whole story of Rabbi Hanani ben Tradian's death. It leads on directly from there, okay? Her father's death, and the executioner taking away the wool of the Sefer Torah on his heart, etc. Right? You're familiar with that. Fine. Bruria, right, here Bruria Devisid Ramea, Bratin Rachane Ben Chadi Navia, she said, Zila Bemilsa Diosvach Soi Bekupashal Zeus. It's shameful for me that my sister is now captured and Nebuch, she's in a brothel. Shokal, so what did Rabbi Meir do? Shokal Tarkava de Dinri Va'osal. He took some money, bribe. Va'omar, he said, Eloi is avid ba isura, mis avid nisa. If she has not done anything wrong, if she's living in a place of ill repute, and she has managed to hold on to her Yirah Shamayim and not to sin, mis avid nisa, then a nace will happen. Any Rashi on this? No. Then a nace will happen to her. I of the isura, but if she has succumbed and given in to the temptations of the flesh, then lo yisavad lo nisa, a nace won't happen to her. So Ozal nokat nafshei kechad parasha. So Rabbi Meir went and pretended to be ke'echad min paroshim. His skin, Rashi says, his skin inyoni levushay. So he dressed as if he was somebody that would frequent this brothel. Mm-hmm. He pretended to be a client, so to speak. Omar, he said to her, now how she did not recognize him, I don't know, it's an interesting question, but he said to her, Hashmi'ini li, be with me. Omrale dashtane ano. Derech noshimli, she said, I'm afraid it's that wrong time of the month, I can't, I'm afraid. She made an excuse. Omralo, he said, matarachna martach. Forgotten what that means. Oh, Rashi says, he said, I'll wait, no problem, I'll wait. Omraloi, she said, Nefishin tuva, deshfirin minoi. She said, don't bother waiting for me. There's many other women here who are more attractive than I am. So in other words, twice she rebuffed him, right? So he said, Shema minole of the Yisura. We see from this that clearly this girl has withstood temptation. She's resisted temptation. And therefore he said, therefore it must be, she didn't just say this to me. She was, obviously, this is her line, this is her excuse. Oh, it's the wrong time of the month, or why do you want me? Go to somebody else. Clearly she is somebody who has managed to hold on to her purity. So he said, okay, so right, now I'm prepared to really put myself, remember, it's a dangerous game Rabbi is playing, yeah? Trying to rescue her. The Romans they know that it's an important family. They've killed the father, they've killed the brother. So he says, right now I'm prepared to rescue her. So he went to the bodyguard, the bouncer, whoever it was in the brothel. He said, give me this girl. Let me take her. I want to go with her. Take her away. So you want to try to bribe him, take her away. He said, you crazy? Mistafina mi malchusa. I'm worried to the Malchus. They're going to come and find out. They're going to say, where is this girl? And I'm going to get into a lot of trouble. Omale, he said, Shkoil tarkava de dinra. Take this money. I'm giving you money. And half of it, whenever they come and they ask you, just, use it for bribes. You keep half of it yourself, and the other half, obviously it was a substantial amount of money, and the other half you use to bribe away the other officials. Omale, and he says, V'chi shalmi, what would be, money doesn't last forever, believe it or not. And when that money's finished, what am I meant to do? My Ovid, Omale, Ema, you should say, Eloka de Meir anena. Eloka, the God of Meir, should answer me. Umitatzeles, and you'll be saved. He gave him a segula. Say, Eloka de Meir anaini. I don't know whether he said it. Probably didn't say it in that dialect. Umatzes, Omalei, Umi Yemar Dahochi Eka. How do I know, says Rashi, She'emes itcho she'enotzel betfilazu? Maybe you're just telling me you're a snake charmer, you're a snake oil salesman. You're telling me garbage. Omalei, Hashtachozes, he says, I'll show you now. Have a hanach kalba to have a ka'ochli inshi. There were a bunch of dogs that would eat people, wild dogs. And he shokal kala shodabahu. So he took some earth and he threw it at them. They came to eat him. When they came to eat him, the bodyguard said, Eloka de Meir aneni, shavkua, and they walked away. So he said, wow, I've really picked up a neat party trick here. So The government then heard what had happened. So what did they do? They came to put the guy to hang him, to take the bodyguard, and to hang him. He said, he said it, and it worked. So they said to him, what is this that you're saying? What is this? So he said, this is the story. He said, this is what happened. So then what they did, and now we pick up with the rest of our tzitut of the citation. Osu chakaku lidmusei d'Reb Meir apischa d'Roimi. You know the FBI's most wanted, yes? So they had the face of Rabbi Meir on all the posters in Rome, or wherever it was. Yeah, in Rome. So all over Rome was the big billboards, wanted, most dangerous, don't approach him, is this picture of Rabbi Meir. Omar, they said, Kol dechazal pritzufa hadain, laisei. Anybody who sees this face, bring him. Yom echad chazu, they saw him once. Rohat abasrei, they ran after him. Rohat mikamayu, all lebeizonos. They ran after him, and he went into a beizonos. Ikad amr bishulei akamoya, Tomash baha umasak baha. Ikad amr osel yahu idamalu kezoina karchasei. Amr chas v'shalom. Rabbi Meir havalei odhacha. Koram orak osel abovel. He then, Bekitza, he has to flee from, he has to run away. And the Gemara says, so in the end, he couldn't stay. It was too dangerous for him to stay. He was a public figure, he was wanted, he had to run away. He had to go, Orak LeBavel, and Rabbi Meir makes his way to Bavel. Now, the last bit of the Gemara is interesting. Ikad Amra Mehai Maisa. Some say, says the Gemara, Ikad Amra Mehai Maisa. Some say the reason he had to run away was because of this story. The Ikad Omri, and some say Mimaisa de Bruria, the story of Bruria. That's the Gemara. The end. Nobody other than Rashi, as we're going to see in a minute, tells us what is Maisa de Bruria. And this actually is very important for you to know as we go further in the discussion of this challenging account. The Rishonim, as far as I know, and I'm doing more research, but as far as I can tell, there is no Makor other than a Rashi we're about to learn. There is no other Makor in Tosfos, none in any of the primary sources. There's no Chazal, and there are people who've got, either have better no Chazal, and with computers you can work it out today. There is no other source. The only source that we have of what this Maisa Bruria is this one Rashi here, which itself is challenging at many different levels, as we're going to see. So the Gemara says there's one possibility why he ran away to Bavel, Maisa de Bruria, the story of Bruria. What is the story of Bruria? And here there is a Rashi. It's a good job you're sitting down, because you know what? I'm going to read and translate this Rashi without comment. And I'm actually going to open the floor. I was actually thinking the other day, I think I do too much talking. Maybe I should do a little less talking and engage you more. But that's just a general comment. So I'm going to just read and translate this Rashi, and then I am going to invite your comments. Okay? Ikad Amr Mishum Maisa de Bruria, source 11, it's Rashi. Shepam achas liglaga. Once, liglaga, that word liglig, we do find many times in Chazal. It means to mock, to scorn, to make fun of, to question in a skeptical manner. It's not a positive term. It is to be skeptical, to be sarcastic, to be not to accept. Liglaga. Pam achas, once liglaga, she was skeptical al she'omru chachamim about the following statement of Chazal, which itself is a subtopic which we may have to go into. Noshim da'aton kalois hein alayhu. Women, their da'as is light. They have kalos hadas. Women's da'as is light. So she did not like that. Liglaga. Va'omar lo. So Rabbi Meir said to her, Chayecha, by your life, Soifcha lahoidos l'divrayim, you will end up agreeing and conceding with Chazal. They know what they're talking about. V'tziva le'echod mitalmidov, and he commanded one of his Talmidim, lenasoisa lidvar avera, to attempt to seduce her to have an affair, effectively. Right? He commanded one of his Talmidim, lenasoisa lidvar avera. Vehiftzir ba yomim rabim, and this Talmid attempted to seduce her and to persuade her, to pester her many days, and shenisratzes, until she agreed. Just give me a second. There's actually one thing I want to look here. Sorry. Ad shenisratzes. Until she gave in. She agreed. Ukeshenoida law, and when it was known to her, chonka atzma, she strangled herself. Va'orak Rabbi Meir machmas kisufa, and Rabbi Meir ran away to Bovel because of the shame of this story.
Oh.
So it's not.
Let's just go over the facts as they are brought in Rashi. She, Pa'amachas, once she made fun of, did not accept, spoke in a negative manner about the Gemara, which says that women's das is light. And he said to her, you'll see, you will end up agreeing with Chazal. He commanded one of his Talmidim to attempt to have an affair with her. This Talmid pestered her for many days until she gave in. And when she found out, whatever it is she found out, she strangled herself, and Rabbi Meir ran away to Bovel out of shame. And that, it says Rashi here, is Maisa de Bruria, the story of Bruria. Come on, Kobe.
Sorry.
That is a story that you should be falling off your chairs. I'm going to keep quiet, and I'm going to ask you for your comments on this story.
One question, without that Rashi,
Yes.
is that like a known fact that she committed suicide? And
It is not.
it is not.
You're asking the right question. You're asking a very good question. Is there any other corroborating source other than Rashi? The answer is a resounding no. It is not mentioned in any of the other contemporary Rishonim. All the others, Rashi is the makor of this. It's not in Medrash. It's not in Bavli. It's not in Yerushalmi. Yeah, don't. It is nowhere else. I'm coming to that. It is. This is what I've printed. That I've been learning here. What is it? There's a mamar here that I want to do this. This is what I'm going through. The next day or two, we'll go through this. It's absolutely fascinating. So no, the answer to your question, you're absolutely you're spot on. It is the right. You're asking the right question. There is no other primary source for this. Not in Zohar, not in Nigla, not in Nista, Yerushalmi, Midrashim, all sorts of no other Rishonim. In fact, I'll just mention one thing, and that is Rav Nissim Gaon writes the following. He actually writes, and I quote, Holach lokach es ishtoi v'chol ma shehoyaloi v'ovar el Iraq.
So he.
Rabbeinu Nissim Gaon, who was the generation before Rashi, he writes that he took, the Gemara says that Rabbi Meir went to, remember the Gemara says he went. The Gemara doesn't say anything about whether she went with or not, or she was dead or whatever. It's like Rashi, Rabbeinu Nissim Gaon says, he holach lokach es ishtoi. He took Bruria with him and went to Bovel. So clearly Rabbeinu Nissim Gaon did not have this account, or didn't agree with it, or had a different Masorah, let's put it that way. So the only Masorah we do have that is contemporaneous is the exact opposite. There's nothing else. Now, what are your thoughts? As students of rabbinics, as students of text, of Talmud, of Gemara, what are your thoughts?
I mean, we can't say that Rashi just made it up, so there must be some.
Leave that side of it to me. We'll deal with that.
Okay.
The question of to what extent this is an authentic, it is actually from Rashi or not, is not that all that simple. And we'll talk about that another time. But that's not the when you see something that this is your approach to a text. Your immediate should not be, oh, well, Rashi didn't say that. I'm not saying that you did, but look at what it does say. Let's assume that Rashi did. Look at what is going on over here and tell me, are you okay with this? Do you understand this? Do you have any problems with this story as it is given over? Gabby?
And for me, the problem would be why is, when we want to define what is the story of Bruria, why is this the story? Like, why? Because for me, a story encapsulates, if you say the story of something, it would encapsulate some essence.
So the answer to that is the Gemara is giving a reason as to why he went to Bavel.
Mm-hmm.
The Gemara gives two reasons why he went to Bavel. Either he went to Bavel because of the persecution, or he went to Bavel because of the story of Bruria. The Gemara doesn't tell us what the story of Bruria is. And no, I want you to ask on the Rashi as we have it.
Why isn't then the student over Ishet Ish? Why would Rabbi Meir, a big chacham, make a student also
Keep going. Yeah, keep going. But talk to me as a halachist. Talk to me as a, come on. That's very nice, but that's a secondary source. Keep going. Go much further back. Go to the Torah. Look at the propriety. Look at the proprietary of what's going on over here from a halachic perspective. Just analyze the story from a halachic perspective and see whether you have any questions. You should have questions, my friend, and you won't be the only. Don't be afraid to ask. You need to ask. The Ben Ish Chai and others on this Rashi ask lots of questions. There are, and I'll read you out. The Chidah has questions on this. You are on the right lines. Don't give up. Don't give up. You're on the right lines.
To rephrase it.
Think.
So it's a double Avera going on here. First of all, for his wife. So meaning he trapped her into doing an Avera, why should he do this?
Why should he? Well, it says why.
No,
because,
meaning...
say clearer.
Kannst
du auf Deutsch sagen?
No, isn't it also like...
Thank you! That's what I'm looking for. Osur. What's Osur?
That to desire someone else's wife, and also to be in the infidelity is also asur.
Yeah, but correct. So,
and also to make them do it.
What's that called? Thank you. We got there.
Mm-hmm.
Are you telling me? Asks the Chidah, asks the Ben Ish Chai, and asks anybody who comments on this Rashi. The holy Tana Rabbi Meir would. And you haven't picked up, there's more subtleties going on over here. Can I show you how you need to Pa'am achas ligluga. Pa'am achas. Once. First of all, the fact that whether she would or would not be milagleg on Chazal, let's just take it at face value. So because she wants ligluga on Chazal, that's enough for him to basically call his marriage over. You also have to know the background of how many times in Shas we have Rabbi Meir doing incredible things at the expense of his own kavod, spitting in the eye. Remember, that story about getting the person to spit in, the woman to spit in the eye of Rabbi Meir. He makes a fool of himself. More than that, he is mafkir himself to save the shalom bayis of other people. And he is prepared to throw that away because Pam achas ligluga does that even sound plausible? Number one. Number two, and that's a different. But the main thing has to be always for us is halach. There is an issa de'oraisa of lifnei iver le'sitein mechshav, to be machshel somebody be'eshes ish, to be machshel his own wife. To take one of his Talmidim, v'tziva, to command his Talmidim, even if he commanded the Talmud, and we're going to see various creative ways to mitigate, to ameliorate, to minimize in some way the severity of this. But we have to look at what we can only go on the words of Rashi. V'tziva, he commanded. He didn't say it was any volunteers. Any volunteers to seduce my wife? That's what one shouldn't treat this with levity. But V'tziva, he commanded one of his Talmidim, even if he commanded his Talmud not to actually then go and do it, Could he be sure of that? Ein apitropos la'arayos. You know what that means? We have Hilchas Yichud. We have because when it comes to immorality and sexual behavior, Chazal left nothing to chance. Yichud applies to a very old man, min ha-Torah, with a relatively young girl. Yichud still applies. And we have a phrase which you must be familiar with, ein apotropos la'arayos. When there is no guardianship, you don't take chances when it comes to arayos. And sadly, we know this, unfortunately. And he would command one of his Talmidim to go and seduce his wife. It's an issa d'oraisa lifnei iver sitin mishol, possibly avizrayu da'aroyas, and maybe if she agrees, who wants to say that the Talmud wouldn't then go follow through with it? It is very, to put it mildly, this is a Rashi that is very difficult to understand. And here we will stop for today. Okay.